We should, we've all finished our exam now, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure everyone has submitted their exam by now, because Maharaj is ready to start the class and first time is up. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome.
Om Jnana Tamarandasya Kananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaihevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So welcome to our ongoing study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And we're on Canto 9. And this evening we're looking at chapter number 19. King Yayati achieves liberation. So you may remember how in chapter 18 we heard about King Yayati and how he got involved with the beautiful young daughter of Sukracharya. And he married, they were allowed to marry with the permission of Sukracharya, but with conditions. And the condition was that he shouldn't get involved with the other girl, Sharmista, who was going to become the maid of Devayani. But of course it didn't happen, and he did get involved, and because he got involved with the other woman, Sukracharya cursed him to become old, and then he gave away his old age to his youngest son. And in this way he was able to continue enjoying his senses for many thousands of years. But although he enjoyed his senses for a long time, he was never actually happy. So on hearing chapter 18, we could ask you, what do we learn from this chapter 18? What is the instruction? What kind of things are we gaining from this description of this encounter of Yayati with Devayani?
Well, you got very specifically advised us that yes, one may enjoy sex life for infinite period, unless senses are purified, there is no happiness.
Okay, there's no real happiness there. Just in acts of sense gratification, you don't get any real happiness, real pleasure. Okay? Thank you for that. Would anybody else like to add something? What did we learn from that encounter?
This sense gratification is like pouring ghee in our sense fire. It never gets satisfied. And so Maharaj Yati came to know that since long I am doing all these things, yet I am not satisfied. So he got frustrated and he wanted to get out of this entanglement.
Okay, so the lesson is just that it's easy to fall into that entanglement. It's not easy to get out. Can we say like that?
Exactly, Maharaj.
Okay. I was thinking also, he should have been more careful about giving his hand to the woman, you know, because he took her hand. So she said, "You've accepted my hand." So she said that we're as good as married now. And so he made a great mistake giving his hand to the woman. He should have had someone else come and take her hand. Okay, anybody else like to add anything to this?
I just think sometimes it's hard for us to comprehend what they're going through, because we just think, oh yeah, you know, he's just sleeping with whoever, even though he's married, and we have to make vows of marriage and stick to one person. But we're living in a different yuga, so it's difficult for us to comprehend this Kshatriya Dharma, you know, where they have to reciprocate with a girl who approaches them for either a son or for marriage. They have to kind of accept battle. They can't refuse battle, and they can't refuse gambling. I guess because we've got all these restrictions on us, it's difficult for us to be like, okay, hang on, how come he gets to do what he likes and he's still dharmic, you know? So, yeah.
Okay, interesting. But we're lucky, actually. Prabhupada says, he said that the more culture is there, then the more there are restrictions, the more there are rules and regulations. So yeah, we have restrictions and rules and regulations. They're good for us. And the Kshatriyas, they also have rules and regulations, but it appears like sense gratification. Actually, it's not so much, you know, if you have to do like that, if you're obliged to satisfy every woman who comes to you, oh my goodness, I think it must be it's no joke, my goodness, it must be really difficult. Well, they could certainly get tired of all these different ladies coming, wanting children.
I was thinking Lakshman was very clever in how he diverted Surupnaka, because he was like, yeah, okay, I'll marry you, but you have to understand you'll be the servant of Lord Ram and Sita. And so then that kind of made her think, oh, I don't know if I do want to be with you. So he was very clever how he kind of twisted when he was approached by someone.
Okay, yes. And here's Yayati, and he's a king. Okay, so we'll go ahead here to chapter number 19. Let's see what's happening here. Sukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, Yayati was very much attached to women. In due course of time, however, when disgusted with sexual enjoyment and its bad effects, he renounced this way of life and narrated the following story to his beloved wife. So there's a lot of interesting points there that Sukadeva Goswami is describing. First of all, that Yayati was very much attached to women. So that is itself, that is a problem, to be too much attached to women. And then we hear that he became disgusted with all the sex and its bad effects. So Sukadeva Goswami is pointing out that there's no actual real happiness in the sex act, and it does have detrimental effects. Certainly it's not something which is really healthy or conducive to a long life or anything. And so Yayati renounced this way of life and narrated this story to his dear wife Devayani. So we're going to hear the story which he told Devayani. He said, I will tell you the history of this, what is it now? there was Yayati said, there was someone exactly like me. Please listen as I narrate the history of his life. By hearing about the life of such a householder, those who have retired from householder life always lament. So, people should retire. The life of such a householder, people should retire from householder life. And once they retire from householder life, they should be happy that they've retired. They shouldn't lament. Anyway, persons who live in the village or town are called Gram Nivasi, and those who live in the forest are called Vanavasi or Vanaprastha. The Vanaprasthas who have retired from family life generally lament about their past family life because it engaged them in trying to fulfill lusty desires. Prahlad Maharaj said that one should retire from family life as soon as possible, and he described family life as the darkest well. Of course, this was when Prahlad Maharaj was talking to his father, Hiranyakashipu. He had said like that, Hidvatmapatam griham andakupam. That one who has accepted family life, then they're like an animal who's fallen in the well, the blind well. Of course, it's not like that for everyone. It's not that every householder is in that condition. But if you're like Hiranyakashipu, if you're in that mood of just simply wanting to enjoy the senses, then it's very bad. You can get a lot of problem. We have to be careful about how we live in this material world. So if we're like Hiranyakashipu, then it's like a blind well. If one continuously or permanently concentrates on living with his family, he should be understood to be killing himself. In the Vedic civilization, therefore, it is recommended that one retire from family life at the end of his 50th year and go to the forest. When he becomes expert or accustomed to forest life, he should accept sannyas. Vanam gato yaddaram ashrayita. Sannyas means accepting unalloyed engagement in the service of the Lord. Vedic civilization, therefore, recommends 4 different stages: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. One should be very much ashamed of remaining a householder and not promoting oneself to the 2 higher stages, namely vanaprastha and sannyas. Yes, it's meant successful grihastas, they will move on into the retired stage of life, the vanaprastha. You don't want to remain simply on the level of the grihastha. Grihastha is for enjoying the senses and expanding the family. But vanaprastha means retired life, and we're thinking about the future, we're preparing for the next life. So the Vedic injunction is that from the age of 50 or thereabout, one should retire from the grihastha ashram and move into the vanaprastha life. And that still husband and wife can be together, but they're not thinking about any sense gratification. They're simply they will go to visit holy places, or they will simply worship the deities in their home and study scriptures, and they will invite people to come to their home, and they will have programs, spiritual discourses and kirtan and so on, celebrate festivals. That is vanaprastha life, the retired life, retired from material activities. taking up full-time spiritual activities. Of course, you have to prepare yourself for that. You have to prepare yourself economically and spiritually. You have to be ready to put aside your material desires and fully dedicate yourself to Krishna consciousness. So you should have a pension or some kind of income so that you can have no economic pressures. That would be ideal. If you can have arranged like that, then you can be comfortable in the vanaprastha stage of life. Now, usually people, if they've worked all their life, then during the course of working throughout their life, they pay money which goes in a fund, and they get that money back after they retire in the form of a pension. I know in the UK it's like that, and I know in China also it's like that. I don't know about every country, but you know, you need to make arrangements so that you can retire. Okay? So Yayati is telling his wife about this story about two goats, right? Wandering in the forest, eating to satisfy his senses, a he-goat approached a well in which he saw a she-goat standing helplessly, having fallen into it by the influence of the results of fruitive activities. So Maharaj Yayati is comparing himself to the he-goat and his wife Devayani to the she-goat. And in this way he's describing how they develop this relationship with each other. Prabhupada says, a woman without the shelter of a man or husband is like a she-goat that has fallen into a well. Without being cared for by a man, a woman cannot be happy. Indeed, she is just like a she-goat that has fallen into a well and is struggling for existence. Therefore, a woman must take shelter of her father, as Devayani did when under the care of Sukracharya. And then the father must give his daughter in charity to a suitable man, or a suitable man should help the woman, placing her under the care of a husband. So this is what happened to Devayani. Maharaj Yayati brought Devayani out of the well, and she wanted Yayati to make her his wife. Yayati accepted Devayani, but he became too attached to her. They had too much sense gratification together. He didn't only have sense gratification with his wife, but with other ladies as well, like Sharmista. But still he was dissatisfied. So everyone should retire by force from such family life as Yayati's. When one is fully convinced, then one should renounce this way of... Then one's life will be successful, right? If your family life is like Yayati's, if it's all just full of sense gratification, then definitely you do have to do something about it. You have to make some arrangement to get out of that situation. Okay, we'll go ahead. After planning how to get the she-goat out of the well, the lusty he-goat dug up the earth on the well's edge with the point of his horns in such a way that she was able to come out very easily. So Prabhupada says that this digging up of the earth with the tusks, that was a lot of trouble. Not an easy thing for the he-goat to do. But because the he-goat was so attached to the she-goat, he accepted all that trouble. In the same way in the material world, men, because they're so attached to the opposite women, to the opposite sex, they will work very hard. They'll do all kinds of terrible activities to earn money just to satisfy the senses of the opposite sex. To give them nice homes and to buy jewelry for them, give them expensive garments and keep them happy. Prabhupada quotes, Aho greha shetra sutapta vidir janasya mohoyam aham mamiti. Right? The union between male and female provides that impetus for gaining a nice apartment, a good income, children and friends. Thus one becomes entangled in this material world. Alright? Aham mamiti, we're thinking my wife, and the woman is thinking my husband, and they're thinking my children, my home. I am this body and this is mine, this belongs to me, it's for my sense gratification. So this illusion, this force of illusion keeps us in the material world. We become covered by that attachment to material things. Alright, the story goes on. When the she-goat, who had very nice hips, got out of the well and saw the very handsome he-goat, she desired to accept him as her husband. And when she did so, so many other she-goats also desired him as their husband, because he had a very beautiful bodily structure and a nice moustache and beard, and he was expert in discharging semen and in the art of sexual intercourse. Therefore, just as a person haunted by a ghost exhibits madness, the best of the he-goats, attracted by the many she-goats, engaged in erotic activities and naturally forgot his real business of self-realization. So this is the problem, that when you engage in these acts of sense gratification, then you forget everything else. Everything is forgotten. And the whole business of self-realization is just put aside. You become so attached to the opposite sex. And the meditation is simply in the mind. You cannot think of anything else but the opposite sex. So this is the danger. One may become a grihasta and enjoy some sense gratification, but you're never satisfied. Materialist is like the goat. Goats are meant for slaughter. In the same way, human beings, they also get slaughtered, working, earning money for the sense gratification. So we're meant for self-realization. Nayam deho deha bhajam niraloke kushtam kamar nahate vidbhajam ye tedo tapo divyam putrakayena sattvam shudyad yasmad brahmashokyam tvanantam. Right? This is Lord Rishabhdev's instructions on this matter. Lord Rishabhdev had 100 sons, and when he was retiring for self-realization, before retiring, he gathered his sons and he gave them instruction. He told them, first of all, he said, there are many living entities, and you're very fortunate to have the human form of life. The human form of life is rare, and it is meant for self-realization. But if you want, Rishabhdev told his sons, if you want self-realization, you have to be willing, first of all, to control the senses and to undergo some austerity, some tapasya. And when that tapasya is successful, then you will experience happiness. You will experience spiritual happiness, not happiness of the body, but happiness of the soul. So Lord Rishabdev told his sons like that, the importance that they have to do some tapasya, some austerity, then they can become self-realized. So here, Prabhupada said, materialistic people, they don't know that they're spirit souls. They don't know there's a soul in the body. They're simply caught up in the world of sense gratification. Sometimes materialists are haunted by ghosts. They forget everything. So the story continues. When the she-goat who had fallen into the well saw her beloved goat husband engaged in sexual affairs with another she-goat, she could not tolerate the goat's activities. Aggrieved by her husband's behavior with another goat, the she-goat thought that the he-goat was not actually her friend, but was hard-hearted and was her friend only for the time being. Therefore, because her husband was lusty, she left him and returned to her former maintainer. So, just like Devayani, she had been taken care of by Sukracharya before her marriage. Then with her marriage, she was given to Yayati, and Yayati, her husband, was meant to take care of her. But Devayani left her husband and returned to her father, Sukracharya. Now in the Vedic culture, women are meant to stay under the protection of a man. In any stage of life, a woman should not have independence. They shouldn't have independence because they're easily cheated. They're easily taken advantage of. They have to be protected. And the husband is meant to protect them. If a woman leaves her husband, goes back to her father, then maybe the father will... A lot of fathers, they won't accept the wife coming back. The wife is meant to stay with the husband. So being very sorry, the he-goat, who was subservient to his wife, followed the she-goat on the road and tried his best to flatter her, but he could not pacify her. The she-goat went to the residence of a Brahmana who was the maintainer of the she-goat, and that Brahmana angrily cut off the he-goat's testicles. But at the he-goat's request, the Brahmana later rejoined them by the power of mystic yoga. So this is the relationship between husband and wife in any society. It's very similar to this relationship which is described between the he-goat and the she-goat. Because the relationship is often just simply based around sense gratification, satisfying the body with sex. So Sukracharya was, Prabhupada said he was an acharya, expert in family affairs. And family affairs are all based around sex, maybe compared to he-goats and she-goats. So Sukracharya was no better than Yayati. Both of them were interested in family affairs, generated by Shukra. Sukracharya was interested in for his daughter, his own daughter. So he had cursed Yayati to become old so that he couldn't have any more sense gratification. But when Sukracharya understood that his daughter would suffer, then he gave that power that he could Yayati could transfer his curse to some other person. So he was using his mystic power to restore Yayati's masculinity. He used his power of mystic yoga for family affairs. Now, mystic powers were meant for realizing the Supreme Lord, but he was using his mystic power just for the family affairs, which is no better than the affairs of he-goats and she-goats. Yogic power should be properly used to realize the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita, the last verse of the 6th chapter, Yoginam api sarvesham. All right? So the story goes on, verse 11. My dear wife, when the he-goat had his testicles restored, he enjoyed the she-goat he had gotten from the well. But although he continued to enjoy for many, many years, even now he has not yet been fully satisfied. So this is the nature of materialistic affairs, the bondage between male and female, that is impossible to actually satisfy each other. Of course, we have a lot of affection for our partner in the affairs, and that affection is very difficult to overcome. So according to the Vedic civilization, we are told we must voluntarily leave that so-called home and go to the forest. Yeah, we cannot force people to go. You can't force them. Voluntarily we have to. In other words, you have to be prepared. Just like maybe when you get married, at that time you tell your wife that when we get to 50, we will retire or we will take up vanaprastha. If your wife agrees, then it's good. As you get older, you can both accept the vanaprastha stage of life. And you enter into family life understanding that in the future you're going to retire. So we have to prepare ourselves like that. We need vanaprasthas. Vanaprasthas mean people, not people who go and live in the forest, but they can go to the temple. They can go to the temple and serve in the temple. There's always need for devotees, for people to do service in the temples. We always need pujaris. We need people to receive guests. We need people to do the office work. And you should come and do service like that for Krishna and preaching there every morning, evening in the temple. So Pancha Sordvam Vanam Vrajet. Vanam, the forest, go to the forest. Pancha, by the age of 50, at least you have to begin preparing to get out of the family life. And it should be voluntarily. We're not forcing you out, but you should be thinking like this and preparing yourself that I have to do this. So Prabhupada said, human life is meant for such tapasya or austerity. By austerity of voluntarily stopping sex life at home and going to the forest to engage in spiritual activities in the association of devotees, one achieves the actual purpose of human life. Yeah, you're not going to have any more children. You get older, by the time you get to 50, you don't want to be having children at that age. And usually the wife is she's already, maybe menopause and she cannot have any more children. And so there's no more purpose in the sexual activity. And you simply give it up, and it's a waste of energy, waste of the life. Semen is like gold, and we should not waste the gold. We don't throw gold around. So same way, our semen, we should keep our semen to preserve our health and long life. So Maharaj Yati continues speaking to his dear wife. He said, my dear wife with beautiful eyebrows, I am exactly like the he-goat. I am so poor in intelligence. I am captivated by your beauty and have forgotten the real task of self-realization. Oh, Krishna, just see. He said, I am captivated by your beauty. The he-goat thinks the she-goat is very beautiful. You know, we are thinking like that. We become enamored. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. So if we remain a victim of the so-called beauty of his wife, then family life is nothing but a dark well. Hidvapma patam griham andakupam. Now Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was also a grihastha. And he has described family life in a different way. He was not like a materialist. He was a pure devotee. And he has written poetry about his family life. He said, Yedina grehe bhajana deke grehete golokobaya. Yedina grehe bhajana deke grehete golokobaya. He said, when I'm in my griha, when I'm in my home, my family home, and I'm worshipping the deity, Yedina grehe bhajana deke, I'm worshipping my deity at home and doing puja. He said, at that time, my home becomes like Goloka, becomes like this spiritual world. Grehete golokabhaya. So this is the power of devotional service. Family life, you worship the deity, your home becomes like Goloka. But if we're thinking our home just to be for our sense gratification, I will just enjoy having relationships with the opposite sex, then it is the blind well. Then it's very hopeless, and you have to get out of that situation. So if we want relief from the miserable condition of material life, we have to give up the lusty relationship with the wife. Otherwise, there's no question of self-realization. And Prabhupada said, unless one is extremely advanced in spiritual consciousness, household life is nothing but a dark well in which one commits suicide. Well, that's what Prabhupada said. Unless we're extremely advanced, oh Krishna. So you have to be very qualified. Otherwise, you have to get out of householder life. And then Prabhupada quotes Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj recommended that in due time, we have to give up householder life and go to the forest. There one should seek shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Hari. Prahlad Maharaj also said, you have to take vanaprastha. He told his father, he said for his father, because his father was such a materialist, he said, for your father, the best way is to go to the forest, live in the forest. So living in the forest in the Kali Yuga means coming to the Krishna conscious community. This is very important for us. Maharaj continues, Maharaj Yayati is giving very important instructions, very nice examples. This is text number 13. A person who is lusty cannot satisfy his mind, even if he has enough of everything in this world, including rice, barley, and other food grains, gold, animals, and women. nothing can satisfy him. So this, this is the position. Materialistic people, we're looking for enjoyment. Nothing can satisfy us. Prabhupada explains it that people, materialistic people, they want to improve their economic condition. But there's no end to this kind of material advancement. If we can't control our lusty desires, we'll never be pleased, even if we get all the material wealth of the world. In this age, we see a lot of material, Prabhupada writes, in this age we see much material improvement, but still people are struggling to get more and more material opulence. Manashastani indriyani prakriti stani karshati. Mam sajiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Manasastani indriyani prakriti stani karshati. Bhagavad Gita sloka. Although every living entity is a part of the Supreme Being, because of lusty desires, one continuously struggles for so-called betterment of one's economic condition. Very rare anyone will say, I have enough. We always want more. We like to get more. Right? We're living in the consumer society. We like to consume. We want more and more. So to have a satisfied mind, we have to give up this heart disease of lusty desires. This can be done only when one is Krishna conscious. The heart disease, right? Within our heart, within the mind, so many lusty desires. How to cure, how to purify the heart, how to satisfy. We have to take to chanting the holy name. We have to take shelter of hearing topics of Krishna. When we start to chant and serve the holy name and worship the deity, then all the dirt from the heart can be removed. If we become Krishna conscious, then we can give up the heart disease. Otherwise, this heart disease will continue and we will never have peace of mind. So we want peace of mind, we have to clean the heart. This is Sankirtan, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtan. All glories to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan. So Maharaj Yayati, he's understood the situation and he's pleading with his wife. He wants his wife to understand the situation they're in. Okay. Text 14, another example is given by Yayati. He says, supplying butter to a fire does not diminish the fire, but instead increases it more and more. The endeavor to stop lusty desires by continual enjoyment can never be successful. In fact, we must voluntarily cease from material desires. So he's giving this example that people often think that, well, I'll just have to satisfy my senses, and then when I'm satisfied, then I'll give up. But it never happens. We always want more sense gratification. We want more and more. We can never stop having sense gratification. So lusty activities are like that. Lusty desires, we want to continue to enjoy them again and again and again. But the only way we can get rid of these lusty desires is when we stop. We have to voluntarily agree to stop these activities. So, Prabhupada's purport, one may have enough money and enough resources to satisfy the senses, but still not be satisfied. For the endeavor to stop lusty desires by enjoying can never be successful. The example given here is very appropriate. You cannot stop a blazing fire by trying to extinguish it with butter. You put butter on the fire will increase. You have sense gratification, your desires will increase. You'll want more sense gratification. You won't say, okay, now I've had enough, now I've had sense gratification, now I don't need it. And we want more and more. That is the nature of lust, material desires. They burn like fire. They never stop. So when a man is, text 15, when a man is non-envious and does not desire ill fortune for anyone, he is equipoised. For such a person, all directions appear happy. Prabhupada quotes Prabodhananda Saraswati, the great poet from South India. He says, Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. Vishwam Purna Sukhayate. Everywhere there's happiness. When one becomes Krishna conscious, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, the entire world appears happy, and we have nothing for which to hanker. So that is the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, that one is completely satisfied. You don't want anything more. On the Brahma Buddha stage, or the platform of self-realization, there is no lamentation and no material hankering. Na sochati, na kanchati. As long as one lives in the material world, actions and reactions will continue. But when one is unaffected by such material actions and reactions, he is to be considered free from the danger of being victimized by material desires. The symptoms of those who are satisfied with lusty desires are described in this verse. As explained by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, when one is not envious, even of his enemy, does not expect honor from anyone, but instead desires all well-being, even for his enemy, he is understood to be a Paramahansa, one who has fully subdued the lusty desires for sense gratification. Yeah, when we're not envious even of his enemy. Envy means we don't like somebody for some reason. Just like it says here, not envious even of his enemy. And does not expect honor from anyone. So that is humility. We not anxious to be honored or given respect by others. but instead desires all well-being even for his enemy. Enemy, people we don't like, people we even hate. But instead we desire all well-being for them. Then this is Paramahamsa. Paramahamsa means the topmost stage, like a swan. The swan can go to a mixture of water and milk, and he can just drink the milk and leave the water. So swans are very expert birds. They like to live in the clear water where there are lotus flowers. Then they're happy in that kind of place. They're not like the crows in the garbage. So the swan-like person, he likes to be with the devotees. He likes to be in the Krishna-conscious temples. He likes to be in the association of swan-like people. And they're considered like swans because they've fully subdued their desires for sense gratification. Material desires burn like fire, never satisfied. So, these verses are very powerful, very significant verses. Okay, go ahead, text number 16. For those who are too attached to material enjoyment, sense gratification is very difficult to give up. Even when one is an invalid because of old age, one cannot give up such desires for sense gratification. Therefore, one who actually desires happiness must give up such unsatisfied desires, which are the cause of all tribulation. So one who actually wants happiness, we have to give up these unsatisfied desires. We have to accept there will be certain desires we have which just cannot be satisfied. And we see, like Prabhupada is giving examples about old people, invalids even in their old age, but they still have desires for sense gratification. They still desire the beautiful young woman, they desire material enjoyment. Sometimes they pass their time watching television, they pass their time reading magazines about women and so on. They pass their time just satisfying their senses, bodily senses. They have no idea that the human life is coming to an end. They're going to have to give up one body and prepare for the next body. They never thought about it. And death comes, cruel death comes and takes us away, without even giving any kind of warning. So this is the material world. It's like that. It's so difficult. Very difficult to give up sense gratification. We become so attached. Just like we eat and we sleep, and we become very attached to these things. We eat more than we need to eat. We sleep more than we need to sleep. But still we like to sleep more and more. We like to eat more and more. We like to go to places we're not supposed to go, even drinking beer, things like that. These kind of opportunities are often there. Sense gratification. Enjoy the body. Even in the old age, people go. They want to enjoy. They have no idea. They have no idea what is real enjoyment. They're just simply thinking real enjoyment is, make the eyes are satisfied to see some beautiful thing. Oh, the ears are happy to hear some beautiful thing. Like that. They're thinking this is enjoyment. Or they, on a very hot weather, they will drink the cold beer, and they think, oh, this is enjoyment, this is happiness, to drink the beer in the cold weather, in the hot weather. So if we want real happiness, we have to give up all these unsatisfied desires. Okay, text 17. This is a very important instruction. Text 17. Matra swashra duhitra va navi vikta nathano bhavat balavan indriya gramo vidvamsam apikarshati. One should not allow oneself to sit on the same seat, even with one's own mother, sister or daughter, for the senses are so strong that even though one is very advanced in knowledge, he may be attracted by sex. So we saw the example was there in Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Brahma became attracted to his own daughter. So we should not sit on the same seat, even with our mother or sister or daughter. The senses are so strong that they will influence the mind. Even though we may be very advanced in knowledge, we may be attracted by sex. So we have to be very cautious every situation. So that is why there's segregation, men and women. In the temples, we try to separate, have segregation. And especially for the brahmachari and the vanaprastha and the sannyasi, they need to be away from the women. They need to be able to absorb themselves in thinking of Krishna. It's important for the man and the woman in the vanaprasthas, the woman can follow the husband. If the man is very devoted, then the wife, she can follow her husband and get benefit. So you have to make arrangements to allow for the husband to benefit, to come to that higher level. So Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about we have to learn the etiquette, how to deal with women. The proper etiquette. He said, even you learn the etiquette, it does not mean that you won't be attracted to the woman. No, there will still be sex attraction, but still the etiquette will help to protect us. Because the attraction is possible even with our mother, sister or daughter. Usually that kind of attraction is not very strong, but still it's there. So we should be very careful not to get too close to the opposite sex. So this is a psychological fact. It may be said that one is liable to be attracted if he is not very advanced in civilized life. However, as specifically mentioned here, vidvamsam api karshati, even if one is highly advanced, materially or spiritually, he may be attracted by lusty desires. A learned person can also be attracted by lusty desires. So the object of attraction may even be our own mother, our sister or daughter. Therefore we should be very careful in dealing with women. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was most strict in such dealings, especially after he accepted the sannyas order. In fact, no woman could come near him to offer him respects. And this is the system. the line of Sankaracharya sannyasis, no woman can come near them. And if they want to even come in the same room where a sannyasi, they have to wear the full-length sari, and their whole body has to be covered nicely. Otherwise they can't get anywhere near a sannyasi. They're very strict like that, the Sankaracharya sannyasis. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was strict. No woman could come near him. Again, we are warned that one should be extremely careful in dealing with women. A brahmachari is forbidden even to see the wife of a spiritual master if she happens to be a young woman. The wife of the spiritual master may sometimes take some service from the disciple of her husband, as she would from a son. But if the wife of the spiritual master is young, a brahmachari is forbidden to render service to her. So we don't have too many spiritual masters with young wives. Some of the spiritual masters have wives, but generally, the spiritual masters are not so young. And so their wives shouldn't be too young either. But it may happen, and if they have a young wife, you have to be very careful not to get too near to her. You may have to serve her and do some service for her, but at the same time you have to be very careful. So text 18, Yayati said, I have spent a full 1,000 years enjoying sense gratification. Yet my desire to enjoy such pleasure increases daily. Oh Krishna. So yes, this is the position of Yayati. 1,000 years enjoying sense gratification. But my desire to enjoy pleasure increases daily. Maharaji Yati is explaining in terms of his actual experience how strong are sexual desires, even in old age. Even in old age, it's disgusting, but even in old age there is these problems. Material bodies, sex bodies. We have to be very cautious, therefore, in dealing with them. So this is the situation here in this material world. We have the material body and we have these senses and they're burning like fire, never satisfied. How to utilize them? We have to learn the art to use our senses in the service of Krishna. Then we can get free. So Yayati said, therefore I shall now give up all these desires and meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Free from the duality of material concoction and free from false prestige, I shall wander in the forest with the animals. So Yayati is describing what he wants to do. He wants to get free from all these things and go off and meditate with the animals, wander in the forest with the animals. Prabhupada said this is the only means by which to give up lusty desires. Unless one gives up such desires, one's mind cannot be freed from material contamination. Therefore, if one is at all interested in being freed from the bondage of repeated birth and death, after a certain age, one must go to the forest. One should voluntarily give up family life and go to the forest. And the best forest is Vrindavan, where one need not live with the animals, but one can associate with Krishna, who never leaves Vrindavan. So cultivating Krishna consciousness in Vrindavan is the best means of being liberated from material bondage. For in Vrindavan, one can automatically meditate upon Krishna. Vrindavan has many temples, and in one or more of these temples, one may see the form of the Lord as Radha Krishna or Krishna Balaram and meditate upon this form. As expressed here by the words Brahmani Adhyaya, one should concentrate one's mind upon the Supreme Lord, Parabrahman. This Brahman is Krishna, as confirmed by Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Param Brahm, Param Dham, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam. Krishna and his abode Vrindavan are not different. Prabhupada quotes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Aradhyo Bhagavan Brajesh Tanayas Tadanam Vrindavanam. Vrindavan is as good as Krishna. Therefore, if one somehow or other gets the opportunity to live in Vrindavan, and if one is not a pretender, but simply lives in Vrindavan and concentrates his mind upon Krishna, one is liberated from material bondage. One's mind is not purified, however, even in Vrindavan, if one is agitated by lusty desires. One should not live in Vrindavan and commit offences, for a life of offences in Vrindavan is no better than the lives of the monkeys and hogs there. Many monkeys and hogs live in Vrindavan, and they are concerned with their sexual desires. Men who have gone to Vrindavan, but who still hanker for sex, should immediately leave Vrindavan and stop their grievous offences at the lotus feet of the Lord. There are many misguided men who live in Vrindavan to satisfy their sexual desires, but they are certainly no better than the monkeys and hogs. Those who are under the control of Maya, and specifically under the control of lusty desires, are called Maya Mriga. Indeed, everyone in the conditional stage of material life is a Maya Mriga. It is said, Maya Mrigam Dayita Peksitam Anvad Avad. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas to show his causeless mercy to the Maya Mrigas, the people of this material world who suffer because of lusty desires. One should follow the principles of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and always think of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Then one will be eligible to live in Vrindavan and his life will be successful. So did you get all that? This is very important instructions here from Srila Prabhupada. To go and live in Vrindavan, very difficult. You have to be very pure in your mind. So Prabhupada said, because people in this material world suffer from lusty desires, so follow Lord Chaitanya and think of Krishna in Krishna consciousness. And then you can live in Vrindavan. The Maya Mrigas. Maya Mrigas. But Prabhupada said everybody, Kali Yuga, everyone's a Maya Mriga. We're all influenced by material desires. So Lord Chaitanya has come to give mercy to these people. Lord Chaitanya is giving the holy name. He's giving Sankirtan, that they can all become liberated. Okay. We'll go ahead, text number 20. One who knows that material happiness, whether good or bad in this life or in the next, on this planet or on the heavenly planets, is temporary and useless, and that an intelligent person should not try to enjoy or even think of such things, that he is the knower of the self. Such a self-realized person knows quite well that material happiness is the very cause of continued material existence and forgetfulness of one's own constitutional position. So this verse, Maharaji Yati, is describing the nature of material happiness. That the material happiness is temporary, so it's useless, will not last forever. It's an unintelligent person will not become attached to thinking about material happiness, which is limited and temporary. Material happiness is the cause of material existence, and we forget our own position in relation to Krishna. So that is the way of material happiness. Material happiness is illusion. The material happiness may be good or bad. It may be in this life or it may be in the next, on this planet or on the heavenly planets. But it is temporary and useless. So we shouldn't waste our time, we shouldn't endeavor for this kind of thing. A person who's understood his spiritual identity, who understands he's the soul, then he won't waste his time, he won't waste his efforts in trying to get material happiness. All right? Purport. The living entity is a spirit soul. The material body is his encagement. This is the beginning of spiritual understanding. And then Prabhupada quotes 2:13 of Bhagavad Gita, Dina smanyata dehe komaram yovanam jara tata deyantara praktir dirastatra namoyati. Right? The self-realized soul is not bewildered by these changes. The mission of human life is to get free from the material body. So Krishna consciousness, or Lord Krishna himself, comes to teach us about spiritual realization and how to get free. He comes to also to give us pleasure, to give the devotee pleasure. as well as to help some people to get free from material bondage. So Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita, says, Yada yadahi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. And then he said, dharmasya glani means pollution of one's existence. Our existence is now polluted and it must be purified. Sattvam shuddhyat. Human life is meant for purification, not for thinking of happiness in terms of the body. That's the cause of material bondage. So Maharaj Yati in this verse is saying that whatever material happiness we see and whatever is promised for enjoyment, it's all flickering and temporary. Abrahma bhuvna loka punara vartano Arjuna. Even if we go to the topmost planet in the universe, Brahmaloka, if we're not freed from material bondage, we have to return to this planet and continue in the miserable condition of material existence. Bhutva bhutva praliyate. We should always keep this understanding in mind so as not to be allured by any kind of sense enjoyment in this life or in the next. We should be aware of the truth that the goal of life is self-realization. Everyone is suffering in the wheel of birth and death. So anything against this kind of understanding, it will just simply bring us unhappiness. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's the verse, Bhukti mukti siddhikami sakale ashanta Krishna bhakti niskam sa eva shanta. Right? Bhukti, material desires, mukti, desire for liberation, siddhi, yoga perfection, kami, material desire. None of these people are peaceful. They all have material desires. But Krishna bhakti nishkam, devotee of Krishna, he has no material desires. He knows the aim of life. He is peaceful. Everybody else, karmi, jnani, yogi, restless, cannot enjoy real peace. Sukadeva Goswami continues, after speaking in this way to his wife Devayani, King Yayati, who was now free from all material desires, called his youngest son Puru and returned Puru's youth in exchange for his own old age. So he'd taken Puru's youth and given Puru his old age, but now he's spoken to his wife Devayani, and they're both more or less free from material desires. So he's accepting back the old age, and he's giving the youth back to Puru. And then Yayati wants to retire from the world. He wants to give up his kingdom. So he divides the different regions of his kingdom. He divides them. The southeast to Druyu, the south to Yadu, the west to Turvasu, the north to Anu. In this way he divided the kingdom. And then the emperor of the whole world is Puru. Puru was the youngest son, but because Puru accepted the old age of Yayati, so he got rewarded. He became the emperor and the proprietor of all of its riches, and he placed all the other sons who were older than Puru under Puru's control. So, of course, we heard about that before. That Vishwamitra had sons, they didn't want to accept someone else as their older brother. So Vishwamitra cursed them to become malechas. But here, there's no problem. They accept Puru as being worthy to be the emperor, to be their leader. The emperor must be above suspicion, right? Should be above any suspicion. So Puru was given that position.
Maharaj, Vishwamitra caused to whom?
Vishwamitra, he had 101 sons, remember? And the oldest, then they had Surashepa. He wanted Surashepa to be the oldest son, and that they should all be under him. So the 50 oldest sons, they did not agree. So Vishwamitra cursed them to become malechas. Right? It was told earlier.
Yes, Maharaj, yes.
Alright, so Yayati had sense gratification for many years, but then he's ready, now he wants to give it up. And he said, he gave it up in a moment, just as a bird flies away from the nest, as soon as its wings has grown. So Yayati was immediately liberated, and that is certainly astonishing. So he gives the example, Sukadeva Goswami gives the example, it's like a tiny baby bird, dependent fully on its father and mother, suddenly flies away from the nest when its wings have grown. Similarly, if one fully surrenders to Krishna, one is immediately liberated from the bondage of conditioned life, as promised by the Lord himself. And Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita, right? 1866. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yishyani masucha. And then also Srimad Bhagavatam 2418. Kereta hunandra palinda pokasha abhira shumba yavana kasadaya yanyecha papaya dapashraya shraya sujanti tasmai prabha vishnave nama. All different sinful races. Kirita, Prabhupada said this means Africans. And then Hana, this is the Germans. Andhra, Palinda, Pukasha, Abhira, Sumba, Yavana, and Kasha. Kasha is the Chinese. Yavana, that's sinful people. They're all sinful races, but they can all be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, who is the supreme power. So we offer this important verse, the prayer of Sukadeva Goswami. When he was asked to describe about creation, he offered this prayer. So Lord Vishnu is so powerful. He said, Prabha Vishnave Namaha. Lord Vishnu is so powerful, he can deliver anyone if he is pleased to do so. So Lord Vishnu, or Lord Krishna, can be pleased if we accept his order by surrendering unto him. Just like Maharaj Yati did. Maharaj Yati was eager to serve Vasudeva Krishna, and therefore, as soon as he wanted to renounce material life, Lord Vasudeva helped him. We must therefore be very sincere in surrendering ourselves unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Then we can immediately be liberated from the bondage of conditioned life. This is clearly expressed in the next verse. So Krishna arranges for Maharaj Yati to get liberated. Maharaj Yati was thinking, I don't know how it's possible. Krishna arranged it. Krishna arranges for the devotee to get free from his material condition. All right? Because King Yayati completely surrendered unto the personality of Godhead Vasudeva, he was freed from all contamination of the material modes of nature. Because of his self-realization, he was able to fix his mind upon the transcendence, Parabrahman, Vasudeva, and so he ultimately achieved the position of an associate of the Lord. So Yayati was able to go back to Godhead and become one of the Lord's associates in the spiritual world. But to do that, you have to be cleansed. You have to go through the process. It's not enough to just want to go there. You have to go through, practice the process. Then you're ready. Prabhupada said, because we are in the material condition, we're contaminated by the guna, sattva gun, rajagun, tamagun. Even if we become a brahmana in the mode of goodness, we're still contaminated. We have to come to the platform of Shuddha Sattva, transcending the sattva gun. Then one is viduti trilinga, cleansed of the contamination caused by the three modes of nature. This is possible by the mercy of Krishna, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada quotes this very nice verse, 1-17. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana Riddhiyantosti bhadrani vedunoti suratsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, Super Soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So this very important verse spoken by Sutta Goswami to the sages in Namasharanya, describing how Lord Krishna acts on the heart of the devotee, takes away the material desires. When we hear, when we develop the urge to hear his message, right? That Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna. We've developed the urge to hear about Krishna. Abhadrani. Abhadra. Inauspicious. Vidunoti Suratsatam. So we have to be eager to hear the message of Krishna. Then our heart can be purified. So the person trying to be Krishna conscious, hearing the words of Krishna from Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, certainly has all the dirty things cleansed from the core of his heart. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord washes away the dirty things accumulated in the core of the heart. As soon as one is freed from all the dirt of material, as Maharaj Yayati was, one's original position as an associate of the Lord is revealed. This is called Swarup Siddhi, or personal perfection. So Maharaj Yayati, he achieved that stage of Swarupa Siddhi. It was revealed to him to be an associate of the Lord. He got that position to be the Lord's associate in the spiritual world. Text 26. When Devayani heard Maharaj Yayati's story of the he-goat and the she-goat, she understood that this story, which was presented as if a funny joke for entertainment between husband and wife, was intended to awaken her to her constitutional position. So in the beginning, it was like a joke, it was funny, and she's hearing about the he-goat and the she-goat, and she could understand the parallel situation, that it was parallel to their life. She could understand that, but after the more she heard about it, and the more she thought about it, she understood there was some serious intention there, that the husband wants to awaken her to the goal of life, to their actual position. So very nice. When one actually awakens from material life, one understands his real position as an eternal servant of Krishna. This is called liberation. Muktir hitvanyata rupam swarupena vayavastiti. 2.10.6. Under the influence of Maya, everyone living in the material world thinks he is the master of everything. Ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyat. One thinks that there is no God or controller, and that one is independent and can do anything. This is the material condition, and when one awakens from this ignorance, he is called liberated. Maharaj Yayati had delivered Devayani from the well, and finally, as a dutiful husband, he instructed her with the story about the he-goat and the she-goat, and thus delivered her from the misconception of material happiness. Devayani was quite competent to understand her liberated husband, and therefore she decided to follow him as his faithful wife. So, very instructive. And Devayani was, Prabhupada said, competent to understand her husband. She, of course, was born in a good family, Sukracharya's her father, so she would have some similar qualities to Sukracharya, and she could understand what point that her husband, Yayati, was making. And she was intelligent enough, she wanted to follow her husband, that her husband wants to renounce, and she thought she should also renounce. So this is the ideal situation. When the husband is a staunch devotee and surrenders to Krishna, and the wife also surrenders to Krishna and takes up devotional service. Text 28, one should be convinced, Therefore, Devayani, the daughter of Sukracharya, understood that the materialistic association of husband, friends and relatives is like the association in a hotel full of tourists. The relationships of society, friendship and love are created by the Maya of the Supreme Lord, exactly as in a dream. By the grace of Krishna, Devayani gave up her imaginary position in the material world. Completely fixing her mind upon Krishna, she achieved liberation from the gross and subtle bodies. So, Devayani also got perfection. Yayati was able to get free, liberate himself, and his wife also. So the example is given here that the connections in the material world, the family, the friends and so on, it's just like association in a hotel full of tourists. We don't all have the experience, of course, of being in a hotel with a whole bunch of tourists, but we can imagine what it's like. That relationship, it's all so temporary. You come together, meet people, and they separate, never see them again. So Devyani understood all of this, the relationships which she was having. It was all temporary, just like a dream. So she gave up her dream and she fixed her mind upon Krishna. Prabhupada says one should be convinced that he is a spirit soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Brahman, but has somehow or other been entrapped by the material coverings of the gross and subtle bodies, consisting of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. One should know that the association of society, friendship, love, nationalism, religion, and so on are nothing but creations of Maya. Our only business is to become Krishna conscious and render service unto Krishna as extensively as possible. In this way one is liberated from material bondage. By the grace of Krishna, Devyani attained this state through the instructions of her husband. So it's a very nice ending to this story. You can see that both of them are liberated. They're getting the perfection of life. This is the final verse of the chapter. O Lord Vasudeva, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are the creator of the entire cosmic manifestation. You live as the super soul in everyone's heart and are smaller than the smallest, yet you are greater than the greatest and are all-pervading. You appear completely silent, having nothing to do, but this is due to your all-pervading nature and your fullness in all opulence. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. This is Prabhupada's purport. How Devyani became self-realized by the grace of her great husband, Maharaj Yayati, is described here. Describing such realization is another way of performing the Bhakti process. And then, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. Hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming His servant, considering the Lord one's best friend and surrendering everything to Him. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, are especially important. By hearing from her husband about the greatness of Lord Vasudeva, Devayani certainly became convinced and surrendered herself unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is knowledge. Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavam Mam Prapadyate. Surrender to Vasudeva is the result of hearing about him for many, many births. As soon as one surrenders unto Vasudeva, one is liberated immediately. Because of her association with her great husband, Maharaj Yayati, Devayani became purified, adopting the means of bhakti yoga, and thus became liberated. So we can see that family life is not necessarily a bad thing, that it can be very helpful. If the husband is good, if the husband's intentions become good, then the wife, if she remains faithful, she can also be liberated. Both of them went back to Godhead. Although they had a lot of sense gratification, they got into a lot of Maya, but somehow Krishna arranged that they could get out of Maya, that they came to the proper level, they understood the nature of the material world to be temporary, and they experienced that they were never satisfied. Although they tried so hard to get satisfaction, they were never satisfied. And then they understood they have to do something about it. And they did. They had to be determined. They had to give up. Of course, some people argue, they would say to Prabhupada, they would say, let us first enjoy sense gratification, then we will become devotees. But Prabhupada will look at them and then say, then that would mean that the pigs are the best devotees. Because the pigs, they're having so much sense gratification. They eat so much, and they have so much sex with each other. Does it mean they will become good devotees? Because they're having so much material sense gratification? Of course, they never become devotees. So this argument that just simply having more sense gratification, that is not the solution. You have to be determined to give up the sense gratification. You have to think, I've had enough, I've tried enough, it doesn't work. And intelligent people, just by hearing about it, they will simply hear and they will understand, I should not waste my time endeavoring for happiness in the material world. That there is no happiness anywhere in this material world. I have to get out from this material world. So intelligent people, simply by hearing, they can understand these things. All right, are there any questions?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Maharaj, wanted to ask, this chapter is very clearly giving the indication of the futility, in almost saying that the futility of Brahmacharya. While Brahma had started the universe with the entire idea of carrying out the instruction of the Lord in terms of populating the entire universe and procreation, the four Kumars had also basically resented it and did not participate. So now this chapter gives a totally from point of view of guiding to the next generation in terms of the children of the people who are having families. So what is the ideal thing? Should Grahastashram be not at all be encouraged, or Grahastashram should be done till the age of 50, and then subsequently, compulsorily, we need to go for it? I want to understand your viewpoint, because it comes up very strongly to the extent that the chapter is almost guiding to the extent that even is a futile type of situation. We wanted to hear your views on this.
You mean, you're asking me if I agree that we should go through Grihastha life and should have children first and then renounce? I couldn't hear your question so clearly. I'm just trying to understand what was your question.
Yeah, my question was essentially, this chapter is, we normally have the 1+ system whereby, we basically have the Brahmacharya ashram, we have the Grahastashram, and, step by step, everybody has to go through it. But here the chapter seems to be guiding us to the extent that somebody has to be truly advised, possibly it would be advisable for him to skip Grihastha altogether. So my question is, does Grihastha need to be skipped altogether as far as the advice to the next generation is concerned, or Grihastha should be done till the age of 50? That's my question.
Yes, well, you know, for most people, they need to go through Grihastha ashram. But it's not absolutely essential. You know, if a person is able to continue in the brahmachari life and go on, then very good. Saves himself a lot of trouble. If he can do it. It just depends on the individual, how much one is willing to dedicate oneself. And as a brahmachari, then what does he do? How does he live? You know, if he's actually brahmachari, he should live with the spiritual teacher, he should engage in some spiritual duties. You know, he doesn't go off and get a job. You know, that's not brahmachari life. If one goes out to work and has a job, then that's not brahmachari life. Somebody's doing like that, they're better off to be a grihastha. But if he's actually a serious brahmachari, he can live in the ashram and dedicate himself in spiritual activities. Living without any income, just simply being maintained by the temple and doing activities on behalf of the temple. Like we have, you know, in temples we do have brahmachari ashrams. The brahmacharis, they'll do services. Some will be pujaris, some will be cooks, some will be book distributors. They do different services like that. So they don't need to get married, they can remain brahmachari. But we do find a lot of young men that they end up getting married. They enter into the family life. They want to experience it. They want to have a family. It's not everybody likes to live in the ashram all their life. It can be a challenge sometimes to live in an ashram. You know, you don't have a lot of facility. You don't really have your own room or anything. You know, you're just living in a very simple way. Not everybody is willing to do that. And sometimes also because of pressure from the family. So if you're very close with the mother and father, the family members, then they can influence a lot, that they want to see their son get married and so on. So it depends on these things, you know. If the male, the brahmachari is very close with his family, then usually the family would like to see the boy enter into family life. But if he's able to remain brahmachari, and if he's satisfied, you know, he's happy to working in the temple and doing service and going out and doing sankirtan and so on, and he doesn't mind, then it can be very good, very nice. No need to get married. Our temples, of course, they have to make arrangements for everybody to provide for them. For the brahmacharis, there should be some nice facility for them, a proper ashram. They should be taken care of. And they can do a lot of service like that. They give their whole life for the service of Krishna. But if they get married, become a householder, then they are going to have their own house, they're going to go away from the temple, probably has to go and get a job, he has to work, maybe has to work in the factory or go to the office or something, and there'll be children, the wife will want a child at least, and so like it becomes involved, commitments, entanglements. It's difficult to get free. So we do encourage the men, try to stay brahmachari if they can. We like to keep them in the brahmachari ashram, young men. If they can remain brahmachari, it's a great credit to them. You know, we have people like here in Mayapur, you have Janani Vas Prabhu. He's coming up to 80 years old. He's been living as a brahmachari his whole life. Became a devotee, what was that, 1970 something. Anyway, more than 50 years. Like that. So dedicated service to Krishna. Sometimes his family come to see him. Sometimes some brothers or sisters, relatives come to visit him. They come from the UK, come to see him. Last year they came. Not every year. And sometimes he will see them if he's in the UK. If he goes to UK, he will see them. So, it's really up to every individual, you know, if they're able to stay brahmachari, very good. Prabhupada certainly encouraged it. He thought very nice. And some brahmacharis can go on and be sannyasis. If they're preachers, they can go on and be sannyasis. Sannyas is really meant for preaching work, for making propaganda. You go around and preach. Okay? Is it all right, Prabhu?
Thank you so much.
Maharaj, why Jananivas Prabhu did not prefer to join sannyas?
Well, usually because he's brahmachari, he's doing deity worship. You know, sannyas is really meant for preaching work. It's meant for going out traveling, preaching. So he's more dedicated to the deities. He does a lot of preaching, of course, but generally his real service is with the deity work. And he does that. He's just, you know, he's like a sannyasi. Although officially he didn't take sannyas, because officially as a sannyasi he would be obliged to go traveling everywhere preaching. So he's involved here in Mayapur with the deities, overseeing the deity worship and teaching also in the deity department, the deity ministry. Not everybody needs to take sannyas. Sannyas is for people who, like, as I said, going out, traveling, preaching, making propaganda.
Maharaj, it is not necessary for everyone to be sannyasi, because we have to follow the B.V.V. Narasimha system, the B.V.V. Narasimha institution as enacted by Srila Prabhupada. So is it not necessary to be sannyas in the ultimate stage of devotional life?
Well, he is a sannyasi in internal sense. He's totally renounced in the internal sense. But externally he didn't go through it. But internally, and he's respected like a sannyasi by everyone. So that what's expected is you internally renounced. That's very good. The external is not so important as the internal.
Maharaj, you were saying in Bhakti B.V.V. class, just I was undergoing the course, you were the preacher there, you were saying that you were initiated by Srila Prabhupada when you were 21 years old. and because that you realize that was also delay for you in your devotional life. So for that you started lamenting why I caused so much delay in life. So if I am correctly remembering, but you are sharing your experiences. So actually what is happening, we after joining this life, we are planning to accept devotional service or bhakti. So that's a problem. So there must be a very early plan in life, whether to join brahmachari or grihastha ashram. So I started bhakti after joining grihastha ashram. So that's why it would have been previously planned. Or of course nowadays in most this Kali Yuga, grihastha ashram is not favorable at all. So far as the experiences emerge, there are different diversity in the family, wife, children, they have different options. So in some and substance that is contradicting and conflicting with each other's priorities and choices. So that's creating a problem. So everything will align in one direction towards Krishna consciousness, it is of course favorable. Or else there are many difficulties and dissensions, diversities in practicing bhakti.
Yes, there's always diversity, there's always differences in practicing bhakti. You have to expect that. You cannot expect that there won't be any like the family may not be so cooperative all the time. But still, at whatever point we decide to take up bhakti, it's good. We should, subhashya sigram, they say, something auspicious, you should do it immediately. And so, even you're in grihastha life, you take up bhakti, very good. Yeah, you take it up and dedicate yourself to it. Some of us, we were younger. I was 21, okay, I became devotee. I already had quite a bit of experience of life, been through a lot. Growing up in the West, I was away from home. I wasn't living with my family. I was independent. So, not very difficult to dedicate oneself to Krishna. With the family, of course, there's always challenges. There's so many responsibilities there. But where there's a will, there's a way. Krishna makes it easier for us. Krishna shows us how we can do it. We just have to be determined that this is the right thing, that I want this. And the more we go on, the more we practice Krishna consciousness, the more we understand about Krishna consciousness, the more we become convinced that this is proper, that this is the proper path, that this is what I want. I want to dedicate myself to this. I don't want anything else. And so when we have that, when we're fixed in that dedication, then it's not a problem. Yeah. And when we read the scriptures, the more we read the scriptures, the more we're convinced. We're being told almost every verse telling us, this is the way, this is the proper path, and there's nothing higher, and everything is there. You get everything from bhakti. So do bhakti, there's no regrets. Okay, any other questions? Parama Karuna Prabhu?
Yes, Maharaj. Here we find Yayati. He's become frustrated. He's not satisfied with the life he's been leading. And therefore, because of frustration, he kind of takes up to spiritual life. and practices satisfaction, and and then eventually goes back to Godhead. Now, it's not that there was an attraction to the Lord, and it wasn't that there was a experience of superior happiness in Krishna consciousness. It seems like material happiness outweighs spiritual happiness. Of course, material happiness has side effects, but at the same time we say, oh yes, spiritual happiness, ecstasy, hair standing on end, and so on and so forth. But Yayati didn't experience that, right? And the reason he took up to spiritual life was because he was frustrated and not quite satisfied with material life. So how to understand this? Because see, one generally doesn't give up something unless there is superior happiness. There's something better, right?
Yes.
And one is not attracted to something greater, right? Unless there is something actually there. So I'm just trying to understand and maybe hear your thoughts, because if spiritual happiness is so great, people really give their lives to things in this world because they see that there's something there. They're willing to do that. People are willing to work really hard. People are willing to really, go to all sorts of lengths if there is something there. So then, if there is such a great spiritual happiness and ecstasies and so on and so forth, other than what we hear of, why don't people sacrifice? And why didn't Yayati also start off with saying, no, because there is some experience of spiritual happiness, therefore, let me take up the spiritual happiness, rather than speaking about I'm frustrated with material happiness, not quite satisfied with the material happiness. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, Maharaj.
Yes, well, we did hear in the previous chapter that, although he was having sense gratification, he was not feeling any real pleasure, any real satisfaction from it. The whole idea of sense gratification is just so dissatisfying ultimately in the long run. There's no real pleasure there, but the thought, when one starts to look for pleasure, just the attempt to look for pleasure, it allows you to think more about your own self. And definitely Yayati understood something about his own spiritual self, that he's able to renounce everything. Being a king and being around there in the Vedic culture, he must have had contact with saintly persons. There must have been many times when different saintly persons would come to him, because he was a king. Well, of course, he's with the demons. The Sukracharya is his father-in-law, and so he has some connection there. And then you've got people like Prahlad Maharaj there, and Bali, and they're there with the demons. I don't know if he had the opportunity to meet with them, but maybe, because Bali is the guru. But certainly, somehow he's got the desire, he wants to give up the material world. He is looking for something higher. He wants something better. And he's ready to give. He knows that what he's got, just simply, this rubbing of the bodies together, this act of the sex, this is not the highest pleasure. This is not what he wants. It's not enough. He's not getting the real pleasure from it. And he knows there must be something more than this. Because otherwise, how could people give up everything? So many sadhus, saintly persons are moving around, and they've given up all that. They must be experiencing something higher. So he must know that there's something there. And he wants to taste it himself. So he's convinced that he has to give up. He has to turn away from his entanglement, from his well. He has to get out of that well. He has to go into the forest. And he's convinced there will be pleasure there. He will find some kind of pleasure there. To get that pleasure, you have to be willing to accept some tapasya. So the pleasure will come after, but first comes the tapasya, the purification. And then with purification, then you can experience real pleasure. Without the purification, you won't be able to taste the pleasure. All right? What do you think, Prabhu? Paramakarana, Prabhu.
Yes, Maharaj. It just, at this point and in this chapter, it just seems like because of the frustration and not quite, being fulfilled with material happiness, therefore he seems like, okay, seems like he's taking on something else, and it seems like he's just saying, okay, look, I just got to be tolerant and I just got to be satisfied, rather than wow, this spiritual happiness is so amazing. Wow, this is explosive, and I'm ready to give up this secondary happiness, right? This lower happiness. I suppose we're also in the same boat. On one hand, we're frustrated, and on the other hand, we don't have that experience of spiritual happiness. Yayati no longer is on the same boat. He's kind of achieved that happiness. So it just seems a little bit frustrating. It seems a little bit how long, and sometimes also devotees can doubt, okay, where is this happiness? And I keep hearing that material happiness is secondary, but I don't have a choice. And then the desire of the soul is to be happy at the same time. Always seeking happiness, always wanting to be happy. I'm just trying, I don't know if I'm kind of just trying to paint the picture a little bit to kind of get more of your insight.
Well, I think it's not fair to say you don't have a choice. Of course we have a choice. We always have a choice, right? We have the choice between accepting the material energy or going for the spiritual energy. There's the choice. We have to make it, and we have to be convinced that what the choice we've made is that, it's for the better pleasure. Well, he already tried for millions of years, a long time. He was trying to enjoy the material world, and he could not succeed. So he's given up, and he's trying now he wants to try the other thing. So he's going into it. He's going the whole way. He's giving up everything, leaving the world and going off into the forest in search of the truth. And his wife she's also understood too, that my husband's doing it, I should follow his example. It makes sense, I think it's quite reasonable that this example is there for everybody. It's actually encouraging for materialistic people that they should also understand the nature of the material world and the pleasure, the so-called glimmer of the material world, the happiness which they're trying to get from this material world, how it's so limited and it's such a struggle, it's so difficult, it's so exhausting, there's no real pleasure there. We're trying. Yeah, and Srimad Bhagavatam describes it as chewing the chewed. There's no taste, but we're trying to chew. There's nothing to taste. So materialistic life is just like that. The attempts to enjoy the senses are just like that. The picture is painted very clearly for us. So Maharaj Yati understood his situation. Of course, it took him some time. He spent a long time trying to enjoy, but eventually he understood that this is what I have to do. That he'd given his old age to his youngest son. So he was obliged to come back and give help. You know, he promised his youngest son that after some time I'll come back and take away your old age and give you back your youth. So he had that debt, he had that lingering on him, his duty to his youngest son, to give back his youth and take his old age. And certainly old age is going to be there for everyone. So he might as well take it and take his old age, and along with old age comes, you know, again, the Vedic culture is there. Old age people understand. They don't try to enjoy. Of course, people today, they try to enjoy, but in the Vedic culture, well, of course, sometimes they did. Dhritarashtra, in old age, he was still trying to enjoy. So people do have that tendency. But great kings, they would go to the forest. They would renounce, they would give everything up and go off in search of the truth. The great souls would do that. So Yayati, somehow he's inspired because he's a king. So he understands his duty. He has to set an example. He has to be an example for the citizens. He's been given that responsibility, and now he has to show the ultimate responsibility to go off and I mean, he's described as a great soul, great husband. Was he a great husband? I thought he was a fallen husband, but it says, by the grace of her, great husband. But he was great at the end, you know, but it took him a while to come to that position. He had a lot of material enjoyment, but then he gave it up. So that made him great, that he gave up material enjoyment and he went to search for the spiritual enjoyment, the higher truth. And it of course, it took some renunciation. So, as a king, he had been maybe brought up with that kind of understanding that this is what you're supposed to do, hearing from scriptures, hearing about the great kings in the past, how they all gave it up. And so he's also inspired. He should give up and go off to the forest, take sannyas. We don't know if he actually took formal sannyas. I mean, Kali Yuga sannyas is different. But Vedic sannyas was to go into the forest, very renounced. Okay?
Yes, Maharaj, on another note, his renunciation, it's quite abrupt. It is described that he gave it up in a moment, just like birds fly away from the nest, as soon as they're grown up. How do we understand this? Because the conditioning and the impressions are there, all right, from our lives, in our lives. And he was able to do this. And no description is given about how he was able to give it up immediately. and without returning it back, without any challenges. And it's almost described like more or less very quickly he attains perfection.
Yes. Well, he gave up his sense gratification. That is the perfection. How did he do it? He did it quickly, yeah. Well, he'd been enjoying for so long that he gave it up. That no longer, after a certain point, just too much sense gratification, you just want to renounce it. Of course, there is a tendency you get chapala sukha, that alternating renunciation and enjoyment. So that tendency is there, but we're told, anyway, according to what we're told here, he went off to the forest. He gave it all up, went into the forest. Going into the forest, you can't come back again, He's not going to come back. They're not going to take him back again. You come back, no way, you've gone, The son's become the king, he's in the forest, wild animals are there anyway. The wild animals didn't get him, Something will happen living in the forest. It's just a preparation for death. Sannyas is meant like that. It's a preparation for death. So he did that. He gave it up. He gave up his connection with the world and went off in the forest. And people were so renounced that they never thought, there was no consideration. We never heard of any king coming back after they renounced, They all went into the forest and that was it. We never heard of them again. They gave up their bodies there in the forest. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone? Okay, so we'll stop here tonight. We'll see you tomorrow night. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go back to Vrinda ki. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki.
Jai.